We are here for another exhilarating episode of What Screams May Come, and I can't think of a better guy to kick this off with than Kristopher Triana, who is an award-winning, very prolific author of some of the most brutalist, realist, incredible stories out there on the market today. Thanks so much for being here, Chris, man. I really appreciate this.
Oh, thanks, Rick. I appreciate you having me, and thank you for the warm introduction.
Yeah, no, 100%. So I have been very, ever since I knew that your book is coming out, I don't recognize this world anymore. In fact, it'll be available for people to grab right now. So, of course, I'm going to put a link down below so people can order this as they're listening to you talk about it. Really excited about that. It's very interesting. You're taking us into quite the journey of a very strange and unique and unknown part of the world, which, of course, is into the prison system. Gotta ask you, I mean, this title alone, I don't recognize this world anymore, is pretty much, it's damn near a sad story all on its own that really resonated for me personally, maybe more than any mere title should. What point in your writing process of the book did you know the title, and what does this title hold for you personally?
Yeah, I like the title too, and it is a phrase that is kind of somber and reflective. It's a phrase that actually came to me outside of writing this book, where I've just, as I've gotten older, I'm in my 40s now, and the world has changed a great deal from when I was younger. It's even changed a great deal from 20 years ago with the advancements of technology, the changes in our culture and our socio-political climate. No matter where you stand on the political spectrum, you can't deny that things in this country are very divided and very heated right now. So there's that, and there's just not really being able to relate to young people anymore and things like that. So I think all the changes in the world and how the world doesn't like the world I grew up in is gone in so many ways. And so that's what has left me saying, wow, I don't even recognize this world anymore. And the way it plays into the book is a lot of people who go to prison, it's very hard for them to come out because the world has changed so much. Even if they don't go in for that long of a period of time, with certain people that have been in for a while, they come out and they see everybody on their phone, glued to their phone all the time. And when they went into prison, people weren't like that. It's a completely changed world, and it's a tough adjustment. So I thought it was very fitting for this book about prison life.
Yeah, absolutely. And very fitting for the times that we're currently living in, and will no doubt be living in for quite some time. Everything has changed.
Yep.
So, definitely appreciate that. Speaking of the very realism and certainly the real reflection that the title holds for the book and for the world that we live in now, as we just mentioned, I find that when it comes to, at least for all the books that I've read of yours, I believe even all the books that you've really written, is that you tend to draw from a lot of your own personal experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, the traumatic, etc. when you're designing your own fiction worlds. I know you even integrated your trip into the catacombs in Paris. You drew on a lot of traumatic events that I know you've talked openly about at various panels. You've referenced people that you've lived, for places you've lived, people you knew, etc., which really, I think, goes towards helping your stories to come off not just relatable, but also very realistic, because so much of it is inspired by your real life. And when it comes to this one, did you have to get thrown into the prison system yourself, for research purposes or other maybe bad choices that you've made, etc.? Is this book maybe an exception to that generalized rule, or what do you say about that?
Yeah, there are things in the book that do come from my real life, but it's not anything inside the prison. It's more stuff that happens on the outside of it, because I've not been to prison, and I've not been a CO, a corrections officer. I've not been one. So all of that is fictional, but a lot of it is based on a lot of research that I did when it comes to the ins and outs of prisons, and particularly the differences between state-run prisons and privately run prisons, right, which are, a prison that makes money off of housing prisoners, which is crazy. And I don't even understand how something like that can be legal, but it is. So that's what interested me. There's been so many prison stories and prison movies, but not really anything covering the topic of for-profit prisons. So I really wanted to focus on that. And also I wanted to do a brutal prison story, but have it take place in a women's prison, which is usually much tamer and not as violent as a male prison. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to make this the Attica of women's prison. This is where all the worst female offenders go, into this prison. So that way I could have a reason for it to be more violent and crazy. But going back to your original question, the things that I drew from my own personal life is that the main character, Liam, he's just, your average guy, but he's kind of down on his luck. He's just gone through a divorce, and his dog, which is the only family he really has left, ends up getting diagnosed with cancer. And so he wants to do whatever he can to raise the money. It's going to be very expensive. He doesn't have that much money. But he wants to save his dog no matter what, even though it's going to be thousands of dollars for the chemo treatment. Now, that's something that I went through myself just shortly before I was able to write full time. And I was working a shitty job that I hated. I didn't have that much money, but I knew I was going to have to find a way to get the treatment for my dog, Bear. And I did. And a lot of people in the horror community helped me with a great fundraiser. It was awesome. Yeah. So we managed to get the care that she needed. But it was a very harrowing experience for me. And so I drew from that. And I also, in the story, Liam, he takes this corrections officer's job in order to get some money to pay for the chemo treatment. But it's not enough. So it begins this kind of Breaking Bad kind of story where the main character starts to do illegal stuff because he needs to provide, to pay for medical reasons, where I know Walter White, he was doing it to provide for his family after he dies. With my character, he's doing it to provide medical care so his dog won't die. So it's kind of like, how far would you go for your pet? How far would you go for an animal that you love? Because my love of my dogs has always been very, very strong, and they are like the last family I have. So that's the real element that's in the book. Is I would probably go to the likes that this guy. Then I had to save my dog. So
great. Well, thank goodness that you didn't have to go to those lands, so that you and I can actually have a recorded conversation about these things rather than a supervised conversation about these.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Yes, I do too. I did do a great deal of research, reading books and articles, by former prisoners, by former corrections officers. And also I read a really good article by a reporter who went undercover as a CO for several months and reported back of what it's really like. And that article is what kind of inspired me to write a prison novel in the first place, because the stuff he was telling me was crazy. I didn't realize how rough being a CO is, and how they have worse PTSD even than PTSD than even some soldiers coming back from war. And how it changes your personality, how it makes you just see the bad in everyone, because you're just seeing bad people all the time that are just constantly pushing you, constantly seeing what they get away with, and how it makes you into a more aggressive person in your everyday life. That really fascinated me, and so that was the impetus for the story.
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's so fascinating. I know it was not too long ago, but I came across a short because it's great junk food for the brain. Watch a lot of those prison shows like 60 Days In, Locked Up, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of ex-cons that have done a lot of YouTube videos now and kind of turned their lives around to that. And I was watching this one that was a CEO who basically got jumped because he forgot to give somebody something that he said, I think something simple as a razor so they could shave. And he ended up getting jumped, and this guy tried to fight him later. I was like, what are you doing, man? He's like, well, everybody was kind of punking on me because you can do what you said you're going to do, and I had to do something about it.
Right.
Otherwise my life here would be, a lot different. And like, I guess the CEO would like, yeah, I guess the guy was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, right, respect that. I understand that now. And I'm just thinking, like, what an insane world to live in for anybody, especially the CEOs who, they're just there because they're trying to get paid. They didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, I also, I actually, a friend of mine is a corrections officer as well. And so I had him beta read it and give me notes.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that helped a lot as well. He was actually surprised at how accurate it was because of how much research I had done. So I was happy about that. I also asked questions to another friend of mine who had worked in a county jail. So it kind of gave me different perspectives, of those two things. So, yeah. And then this book is a little different for me because a lot of my books take place in the Northeast because I live in New England. whereas this one takes place in Arizona. And I'd been to Arizona a couple of times, and I just thought it would be fitting to have this kind of hellhole in this really hot, arid climate. And so I did actually a lot of the descriptions that I write about, Arizona, what it looks like, and being off old Route 66. All of that came from snippets of journals that I was writing when I was traveling. Ironically enough, some of it was from journal writing that I did when I was on a road trip with my dog Bear after she finished treatment. Yeah, we did a road trip across America to hike all these different great places to hike, all these famous hiking spots. So we went all the way from New England to the Grand Canyon and back. So it was pretty cool.
That is amazing. That's a damn good memory. That's a good. I'm so glad that you got to have that.
Yeah, that's really great. It was great. Yeah, I told her, I was like, hey, you get through this rough chemo, and I'm gonna take you hiking across America, and I did. Yeah,
oh man, that gives me chills, man. That's good. That's the good stuff. Yeah, and the next question I want to ask you too. I'm just going to say way off of that. I want to get this question out of the way because it's an uncomfortable question to ask. I'm sure it'll be an uncomfortable question to answer. I've had the opportunity, at least on a couple of occasions, thanks to Author Con, of having met Bear. And I mean, Bear's such a sweetheart. And I mean, she's, on the cover of your book, that, the Ruin Season, that's over here behind me as well. Everybody should grab that book, by the way. It's freaking awesome. I mean, I could put any of your books back there and say the same thing, but that's the one that got me hooked. So I'm biased on that one. But when you're writing about that, of course, with Liam's pooch going to great lengths to try to save his dog as well. I mean, I can only imagine that had to be pretty tough. I mean, especially you've lost, Bear and then, another fur baby as well, not too long after that. And I'm just like, oh my God, like, give this man a friggin' break. This is like, it's just heartbreaking having to go through that stuff twice. And our, late great pal, Jack Ketchum, Dalsmere, as you know, has always said, lean into the pain when it comes to writing. Yep. But in doing so, and I know that's exactly what you do in your work, but how the heck did you manage that sort of pain while you were writing about Bear without, second guessing that choice of leaning into it and maybe embellishing it more so it wasn't quite as realistic for you personally?
Yeah, well, when I was writing this particular book, I finished it before Bear passed away, and before Shadow passed away. She passed away after Bear. So it was really me, like what I drew from most was just that sadness and anxiety of her being sick and knowing she didn't have that much longer to live. But without the chemo treatment, she would have died within 2 or 3 weeks. But with the treatment, she ended up lasting 2.5 more years, which was incredible. Oh, and I see your fur baby walking past.
Yeah, who's this? Pardon my cat.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it took up this long. Someone was talking. It's not about me.
Yeah.
Change that. Just getting out of the camera.
But yeah, I mean, I agree with Jack Ketchum in about the pain. I agree with him in many ways. He was very much my literary idol. I love him. But I definitely agree with leaning into the pain. I think a lot of great art, including great stories, come from pain. But like even when Bear and Shadow did pass away, they both died within less than a year's time. It was hard, and it did have an effect on me. But I've always turned to writing for solace and to take my own mind away from real life. So I always just continue working no matter what's going on, no matter how bad things get, because if not, I would never get anything done.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's not always easy, particularly when you're writing about something personal. I will say with this book, I didn't make it too much about the cancer and dogs and that, because I didn't want it to be too emotionally distressing for people who've been through that, because it is awful and it's horrible to relive. So right. I got it out there early in the story of what's going on, but the focus of the story is what happens in the prison and what this guy goes through with smuggling stuff into the prison to try to make more money. So it's really more about that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm happy to hear that as part of a springboard thing, for your sake and for, like you said, other dog lovers and just animal lovers in general have gone through anything similar.
I did have a couple readers already, though, say that, it did make them cry because of that. So,
yeah,
but
bastard.
Yeah, but then they were complaining. They're just like, "Wow, it
Yeah.
really moved me because I've been through this. And
Right.
you did it well." So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I mean, there can certainly be, on the other side of it as a reader perspective, reading something like that, and then kind of going through some of those emotions and as safe of a place as you can get, which is, a book in your own space can be extremely cathartic as a reader. And, not even sometimes it catches at least me off guard and think, oh my, I didn't even realize I still had that bottle inside of me. I guess I needed to get that out. That this is good. This was,
yeah,
a mental, spiritual, emotional wash that, I never knew I needed. So, so there's always that aspect of it
yeah.
as well. And I know, Chris, with all of the research that you did in fact do for the book, and I mean that's super cool. You've got some friends that are in the system as well that could help you out with that. And I'm going to assume where they probably, a fraction that you essentially took their perspectives and some of their experiences to relate to the book, but there's clearly a lot of stuff. I mean, it's not a documentary; it's a story. But along the way of your research, was there anything that you learned about the penal system, whether it was state-run, federal, county jail, that kind of stuff, that really surprised you, where you're like, wouldn't even imagine in a million years that this is a part of that life, that system.
Yeah, one of the big things is again, I was focusing on the for-profit prisons, and one of the things that really got to me is that prisoners, if they're behaving themselves, if they're staying in line, they earn what's called good time, which is time that is taken off their sentence as a reward for their good behavior. Now, in most situations with a traditional state-run prison, those or federal prison, those are they don't want to necessarily keep people there forever. They want people to be rehabilitated and get them out of there because they're overstuffed as it is. But with the for-profit prisons, they're making money every day that someone is in that cell. It's kind of like, think of it as like renting out rooms in a motel or something. So if they're making $30-$50 every day that a prisoner's in there, they're not going to want to award them good time. They're not going to want them to have shorter sentences because they're making less money. And that's one of the things that's so fucked up about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that really was shocking to me. And also, like I was saying about the emotional toll that it takes, not just on prisoners, but on COs, to just have to be in such a hostile environment all the time, and how they do come away with PTSD, and how it does alter the way that they look at other people. And in this particular book, it being a male CO in a women's prison, how that dynamic works with sexual conflict and everything. Like when he first goes in, all of these women know that he's a rookie, and so they're just catcalling him and like doing all of this stuff to him. And so it's an interesting kind of switch of gender roles in that aspect.
Right.
He's being harassed by all these women.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I know I've from some of the shows and whatnot, but I've seen that's, a lot of the inmates, I mean, they take pleasure. Well, two things: they take pleasure in trying to break a new CO, and they also do that to test him to make sure that he can be a part of their community and somebody they can respect, and
Right.
that's not going to break and not be an a-hole to them, and is going to treat them with respect as well. And I guess that's just part of the what do you call that? I guess really the breaking in process.
Right. It's important that you don't back down on anything ever, because once you do that, everyone's going to try to make you back down. So yeah, the character of Liam, he learns a lot of lessons because he doesn't have any previous experience in law enforcement or even the military or anything like that. He's just your average guy. He drinks beer and he watches South Park reruns and all that. He's just an average guy. Yeah, he has to learn to just behave differently. He's not naturally aggressive. It's just something that he learns to become. Not just dealing with people in the prison, but dealing with the criminals outside the prison that are helping him transfer drugs into the prison. Because what happens is he partners up with one of the women in there to start running drugs and other things into the prison. So yeah, he definitely has to toughen up.
Yeah, and to segue off of that as well, I know with the his wonderful friend that he meets in there, I want to reference back to the title that it's one of your older titles that we've mentioned before, that I mentioned before, the Rune Season. I know in that one, of course, you've got the main character. He tends to get really heavily involved with a woman as well. That, I mean, she's not really all that great for him, but he gets so enamored with her, becomes almost like a father figure sort of protector, but not in a creepy way. He also gets involved, obviously, very heavily romantic with her. And she kind of sends him on like some very serious, or puts him into some very serious and dangerous situations because of his feelings towards her.
Right.
And of course, now here we are again, fast forward to this one, that Liam, who again has chosen once more, might not be so romantic in inclinations, but certainly another woman that he's fallen in with, and she somehow has turned his life inside out as well. So I know this is probably a more of a two-part question, but what is it about putting yourself or oneself, on the line for all the right reasons, for not necessarily the best person, that you find is such a intriguing storytelling trope? And to kind of add on to that, if you don't mind me doing so, is what's your personal connection, if any, to that plot device that helps you write it so damn well that I know that I'm not the only one that reads this and think, yeah, I've been there before. I know exactly what this guy's going through.
Right. Well, I think that's the answer right there, is that, we've all been led astray by other people. And particularly we get led astray by someone that we're attracted to or have romantic feelings for. We'll do way more for them than we'll do for anyone else, including ourselves sometimes. But the scary thing is that sometimes we fall for the wrong people and they can really wreck our lives. So it's a good springboard for telling a crazy story, that a guy or a girl gets involved with somebody who misleads them or gets them in a bad situation. And I have done that with those two books. I also did it with Toxic Love. And, it doesn't always have to be a man being led astray by a woman, but that is the perspective that I relate to the most, having, being a heterosexual male.
Sure.
But yeah, I've definitely had female characters in stories that were led astray by bad guys too. But it's just a good springboard for telling a crazy story, because, you want to have a relatable main character, so they can't be just totally nuts to begin with. Really, I mean, some stories that works, it just depends. But in this type of storytelling, you want a character who is relatable, and you're seeing them do crazy things, because it makes the reader say, okay, would I do this too? How far would I go if I was in this person's shoes? And so it kind of tests the morality of the reader on top of that, because you relate to this guy, and then how much can he do before you're like, well, this is too far, man,
Yeah. So one of the cool things that we're going to do today is, I understand you also have a section of your book that you're going to be able to read to us from, to give us a bit of a taste and make us want to get behind those bars along with you, Liam.
Yeah, absolutely. As I was saying earlier, in this book, Liam meets in the prison. He meets a woman named Zoe and starts up kind of a friendship with her. She seems trustworthy to him, but she says, if you want to make extra money to help your dog, we can, you can start running stuff into the prison. So at first, he starts small, but then like throughout the book, they're bringing in bigger and bigger different types of drugs and different paraphernalia that pose more of a risk for them. But in order to get that stuff, Zoe sets Liam up with her cousin Dennis, and who is on the outside. And by meeting with Dennis, he gets the product that he can bring into the prison, that he can sneak in. So in this scene, he first meets Dennis, and they are talking about what they're going to do. And I'm reading this scene because it gives a little glimpse of what happens throughout the story. It's kind of a lead in to what is coming up.
Perfect.
So here we go. It started with simple stuff: cigarettes, tattooing, those airplane bottles of alcohol, better snacks and makeup than what the commissary offered. These things were contraband I could be disciplined for. Fired for, but nothing that could lead to a hard arrest. It was also easy to carry these items into the prison because Norrington's security checks were relatively relaxed for COs, particularly once they established themselves. I still had to go through the guard post when I drove in, but going through the interior check line was a cakewalk for a variety of reasons. For one thing, the metal detector was old and faulty. It only worked when it wanted to and had falsely gone off several times, leading to the unnecessary searches of guards and civilians. So the metal detector became a boy who cried wolf. And like most of the other damaged equipment in Norrington, ACI didn't want to dip into the budget to make repairs. I'd even heard from some of the veteran COs that whatever was left in the budget at the end of each fiscal quarter determined what size bonuses the captain, warden, and assistant warden received in their paychecks, but that may have just been office rumors. Another reason the walk-through security check was easy was because we employees were always understaffed and hurrying to get to our units. Plus, rookie COs were placed at the metal detector with little idea how to even use the equipment. Some were just out of high school and had the attention span of a gnat. Establish a rapport with them, and you could bullshit while going through the routine, distracting them. Accepting purchase orders from her fellow inmates, Zoe got them or their loved ones to put money on her green dot card, which any large purchases being paid to an account her cousin handled for her. I didn't know all of the details, but my service fee ranged depending on the item and quantity requested. Tobacco and alcohol were in the highest demand, and I could easily sneak the packs in tiny bottles under my clothing. Zoe and I kept coded logs and compared them regularly to make sure they matched, and I built up a collective total to be paid out to me each week. Inmates weren't allowed to have cash, but Zoe had another way to give me my share. My cousin Dennis, she explained on one of our slow walks to the workshop. She gave me his phone number. He'll tell you where to meet so he can square up with you. The thought of exchanging money under a bridge somewhere added another element of danger to what we were doing, but I couldn't think of any other way to go about the transaction. When I called the number, a fluttering voice gave me the name of a bar, and after my shift, I changed into a t-shirt and jeans and headed to Goldie's. It was just past 11 p.m. on a weeknight, and the small bar was packed with men. Only men. At a high table near the windows, a skinny guy in a white jacket waved me over. He had hair like Pee Wee Herman and wore a touch of pink lipstick. His fingernails glossed. "You Dennis?" I asked, making sure I wasn't just being hit on by a stranger. The man nodded and gestured to the high-backed chair across from him. The music was loud, so we had to lean in to hear one another. The whole situation was nothing like I had imagined. I'd pictured Dennis as some hard criminal with biker tattoos and face scars. I thought we'd meet at some quiet, dilapidated location, not a popular gay bar. Dennis extended his hand. We shook, his bony grip harder than I had expected. "Beer?" he asked. Sure. Good, because that's what I ordered you." I hadn't planned on staying, but wanted our business relationship to be a good one. Dennis drew a small envelope from his jacket and slid it across to me, making no effort to conceal the transaction from the other patrons. It didn't matter. No one was looking at us. I opened the envelope and thumbed the bills. "Never count your money at the table," Dennis said with a smirk. "Don't you know the song?" I slid the cash into my pocket. Looked like more than I'm owed. Consider it an advance. A waiter appeared through the crowd and dropped off our beers. Dennis had ordered something fancy, a local brew or seasonal ale. Nerves had robbed my mouth of moisture, so I drank greedily. "An advance, huh?" I asked. Elbows on the table, Dennis made a tempo with his fingers like a cartoon villain. "We have big plans for you." He said it with an air of positivity, but I couldn't help but sense an aura of danger surrounding the man. The one thing that reassured me was my relationship with Zoe. We had a rapport unlike anything I had with the other inmates, and I was confident she wouldn't get me involved with anything too risky. Still, Dennis spooked me. He made sudden, twitchy movements as if he were on drugs or trying to kick them. With his feet on the rung of the seat, his legs bounced like he was playing the drums. "Zoe tells me you need quick cash," Dennis said. "Says you're in a bind. Something about cancer?" "That's right." I hoped she hadn't told him more than that. I wasn't pleased that this man knew anything remotely personal about me. "Yeah, well, fuck cancer," Dennis said. "That shit's in all of us. Did you know that? We've all got it. Our bodies fight it off constantly until one day the cancer just gets too strong and then BAM!" He smacked the table. "Suddenly you're on fucking chemo, puking your tits off and going bald. The cure's worse than the disease, right? It's a shit hand God lays down. More like a backhand if you ask me." His rapid-fire speech caused me to lean back in discomfort, but Dennis didn't pick up on these social clues. "Then," he said, "to make matters worse, we've got the American healthcare system. What a joke, right? Maybe you won't die, but you'll wish you did when you get the bill. And it's all designed to rape you of as much money as they can. Doctors get rich keeping you sick, so why would they want to make you better all lickety-split, right? I'm telling you, I know all about it." I drank my beer. The sooner I finished it, the sooner I could excuse myself and go home to rest up for tomorrow's double shift. You're smart hooking up with Zoe, Dennis told me. She knows what she's doing. Really plays the game right. She's told me a lot about you, Liam. That the man knew my name made me cringe. Like what? I asked. She says you aren't afraid to take chances. I respect that, big time. A man's got to have balls if he's going to make it in this world. Even women need balls these days. He snorted a laugh and downed the rest of his beer. I finished mine too and was relieved when Dennis stood, thinking our meeting was adjourned. Walk me to my car, he said. I didn't ask questions even though I knew I should. We stepped out into the desert's cool night air, the sounds of the street seeming ambient after the pounding music of the bar. Dennis walked with the swaying hips of a woman, but this air of femininity did nothing to detract from his intimidating nature. Though short and lightweight, there was an unstable intensity to him that kept me anxious as we went deeper into the parking lot shadows. I flinched when two men stepped out of a parked car, but they passed by us and headed right into Goldie's. I was alone with Dennis. I want to show you something, he said. Reaching his sports car, Dennis opened the door and pulled a cardboard box into the light of a street lamp, then tilted it toward me and opened the flaps. Cellular phones were stacked in the box like little black bricks. You know how much one of these goes for in the joint? He asked. I bit my lip. Cell phones were high on the list of unacceptable prison contraband. Obviously, they would be pricey, and with good reason. Tens of thousands of calls went through American prisons every day, and all of them were regulated and monitored. They were also grossly expensive, costing over $5 for a 10-minute call, no small amount of money for inmates making pennies an hour. An inmate with a private phone could speak openly with folks on the outside. To convicts, this little device all free people carried in their pockets was like a genie's lamp. These are burners, Dennis told me. Disposable phones. When I buy them in bulk, they're $8 a piece. We could charge about 70 times that for one snuck into the joint. Phones all over the prison? Come on. That's asking to be caught. I'm not talking about giving one to every con. All you do is sneak in a couple to Zoe. One or two just for her special highest paying customers and another for Zoe to keep. She can charge others to use them now and then. Simple, right? Looking at the plentiful box load, I shook my head. I don't know. This isn't like sneaking in Marlboros or candy bars. Inmates can use phones to commit crimes from the inside. They can talk to their gang members or bosses, orchestrate all kinds of things. Shit, Dennis said through a smile. This isn't a men's prison we're talking about, buddy. These ladies don't want a phone so they can order a hit on somebody. These are mommies we're talking about, right? With a phone, they can talk to their children whenever they want. They can send their boyfriends pictures of their pussies. That's all it would be. It's still a major risk. That's why you'll be handsomely compensated. Take in 3 phones and I'll give you $1,000. I blinked. $1,000? All I'd trafficked up until this point now seemed like nickel and diming. You're taking the risk, right? Dennis said. You keep the $1,000 and I'll take the leftover 600 and change. The enormity of it began to sink in. I ran my hand through my hair, eyes not leaving the box. They were just small flip phones, easy to conceal. I'd learned from doing shakedowns just how inventive inmates were when it came to hide and seek. Zoe was clever. She could handle the challenges of stashing an illegal phone in Norrington. But the other prisoners, whoever they were, was another issue. They might get sloppy, and if they were caught with a phone, they might snitch. They wouldn't know I was the one to have brought the phones in, but they could rat out Zoe. I was confident she wouldn't squeal on me, though. I was her supplier and friend. Every day we were growing closer and fonder of one another. It was even more reason I didn't want anything bad to happen to her. Sometimes I even fantasized about her getting an early release. I would give positive reports about her that would go all the way up to Warden Nowak, gaining her good time and helping her make parole. Then I could take her on a proper date. We would have all the time we wanted to talk instead of those 2 brief intervals in that one private hall. I imagined us having nice meals, going to the movies, and taking long walks with Charlie. Maybe we'd become an item. Maybe I'd remarry. Of course, I'd not confessed any of these daydreams to Zoe. There'd been no amorous exchanges between us. The only hints of romance gurgled beneath the surface of whatever we had become. I saw it in a gleam of her eye or a wetting of her lips, brief flashes of tenderness expressed without the benefit of physical touch. Zoe wasn't like that sex pot Lily Gutierrez. Zoe was girlfriend material, but unfortunately, she was incarcerated. I'd have to be patient. I'd have to wait for her, like someone whose spouse has gone off to war. What about Zoe's cut? I asked Dennis about the phone deal. She gets a piece of this too. Dennis grinned like a jester. Such a gentleman. You don't happen to have a gay brother, do you? He chortled. Hey, Zoe gets the phone. That's all she wants out of this. Besides, anything that benefits you and me benefits her too. I mean, we're a team, right? That's the end of that chapter.
Wow, thank you so much for reading that. That was great. I'm in.
Oh, good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love all the nuances and the subtleties to the just the mannerisms and the details to kind of what's going on between the lines kind of thing. I always find it so fascinating, and when it's pulled off well like that, it's just, yeah, that was fantastic. You bet. And I guess before we close the bars on this episode, Chris, do you have any final statements that you want to make to the public about I don't recognize this world anymore?
Yeah, but just that I hope everyone enjoys it. It's not as extreme horror as, say, Full Brutal or Toxic Love or something like that, but it has some really dark themes, and it does have some intense violence and some carnage in there. But for those of you who do like my more dramatic stuff, it does have a rich story, and you'll also learn a lot about what it really is like behind prison walls, because, as I said, I did extensive research. I consulted with people that work as COs or work in law enforcement, so I tried to be as authentic as possible. So it is kind of an eye-opener on some of the problems we have with our correctional system in this country.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Chris. And everybody watching this, thank you guys for joining us. Please hit the like button as well. It really does help get Chris and his work in front of more people like you guys, so that we can all enjoy fantastic storytelling and help authors do what they do best, which is promote them, get more readers, so they want to keep on doing this stuff to keep writing more fantastic stories for all of us to enjoy. So thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Chris. Really appreciate this, man. It's been awesome.
Thanks, Rick. Yeah. Enjoy, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning into the show.